Hi everybody, it's Stephanie from the Stellium Astrology podcast. I'm your host. I'm the founder of stelliumastrology.com. I'm a tutor at the London School of Astrology, and I've also previously written horoscopes for Elle magazine. As you can hear, my voice is not recovering from corona, and I'm very sorry if it's difficult to listen to me like this, but I have to carry on. I have to carry on podcasting, making videos. It's just what I do. So I previously said that I kind of sound sexy. It's sort of sexy, but you know, when you hear like what my voice is normally like, it probably grates a little bit. So if it's your first time here, I don't normally sound like this. And if it's not your first time here, I apologise. But today I wanted to talk to you. I have uh, a listener chart actually to look at. I had somebody get in touch with me with an interesting subject, which I don't think I've covered properly, and I can't cover it properly in its entirety because it's a massive subject. But this isn't just a listener, this is also a patron of mine who emailed me ages ago, and I put her email in my I will respond to these messages folder, and then I didn't respond for ages. So I'm very sorry. But she also left me a lovely review, which I talked about, which prompted her to email me. And she sent me a nice message all about herself and all sorts of things. And she asked me a few questions, which I could probably make a few episodes out of each of the questions. Okay, I've got somebody cleaning the window right next to me as we talk. It won't take long. Catherine's question to me was, I've been wondering about the 10th house and the midheaven for a while, but I don't know if you've gone into this in any subsequent podcasts, but I have a question. I have Virgo rising with an empty 10th house in Gemini, 9th house Taurus with MC, Saturn, Juno, Ceres, so pretty chock-a-block. Subsequently, I've pretty much ignored my 10th house until very recently and taken my 9th house as my career house. Until September 2020, I'd been in the same job for almost 22 years. I've been looking on and off for another position for several years, but the right type of role for me is a little tricky to find, so I found myself treading water for probably too long. Having a lot of fixed energy in my chart, I have to say I completely relate. At the time, I didn't understand. On the 4th of September 2020, I saw a position that sounded interesting, got an interview the following day, offered the job, signed the contract by the 11th. Wow, whirlwind. At the time, I didn't understand astrology as I do now, but looking back on my AstroGold app recently, I can see that the North Node had just entered my 10th house. As my understanding about astrology unfolds and knowledge is revealed to me in my perspectives about life, seem to constantly be in flux. You and me both. She says here, I was seeing Uranus in my 9th house as the main influence for my sudden job change. It occurs to me now that life's picture seems to become more in focus with the help of astrology, which is such a lovely thing. So my understanding of the 9th and the 10th houses is lacking. I glean more knowledge from podcasts like yours, which give great chart examples, which I love. So I'm really glad that it's helpful. I have actually cast your chart. There we go. So there we have Catherine's chart. 14th of August, 1970, born at 6:35 in Ipswich, United Kingdom. So let me just double check that in the message, because you sent me your chart details in the message. Ipswich, Suffolk, yep. And it says that you've got Virgo rising, which indeed you do. 0 degrees Virgo with 6 minutes of arc. Now, that is extremely precise. Like, I mean, if you were born minutes before, I'd imagine, maybe 4 minutes before that. 1, 2, 3, even 1. So there we go. So 1 minute beforehand, you'd have a Leo ascendant. But 6:35, you have got Virgo rising. You've also got South Node rising in Virgo as well, and North Node on the descendant. Catherine has also got, so she's got Sun in Leo in conjunction with Mars, and she says that her Sun in the 12th house makes her hide. It's funny, I know another lovely Leo, a girl with a Leo stellium. In fact, I think she's like a Sun Mars in Leo, and she has Virgo rising, and she is really, she's very gorgeous, and her hair is very dreamy, 12th house, almost mermaidy. And yeah, she's got Virgo rising, and she's very much a behind the scenes person. So, you know, when your sun does fall there, I think the same with Madonna. I think Madonna is a Leo, but look how in the spotlight she is. Is she a Leo or is she a Virgo? Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but I think she's got Virgo rising. I think she's a Leo with Virgo rising. And though she's in the spotlight, she's almost in service, isn't she? Her performing, her whole life has been to serve the audience, to serve her, the people that follow her, the people that religiously follow Madonna, the disciples. And she's still doing it. Like, she just doesn't stop. She's just she's even had a fall and hurt herself and that, and she keeps going. So anyway, let's have a look at your chart. So you've got Sun and Mars in Leo in the 12th, Virgo rising with the south, with the nodes on the ascendant descendant. You have Mercury in Virgo and Pluto as well. So yeah, I mean, you've got like that's quite a deep and investigative. In fact, that gives your whole chart a very Pluto flavor, because obviously you have Virgo rising, so Mercury is the ruler of your ascendant. And oh, let's hang on. Let me change the preferences quickly. So I'll put in your ascendant. I see. Okay. You said you have Sarah's and Juno as well, so we can put those in if you want. Where are we? So you said Saturn, Juno, Ceres. Let's stick Juno, Ceres, and a little bit of Lilith in there as well. Why not? Okay. So now we've got your chart. So you've got So you've got your midheaven in the 9th house in Taurus. And yes, I can see why you'd think that Uranus being in there would create a little bit of sudden change for you. Oh no, I've put Pallas in there. Where's Juno? Hang on a sec. There we go. Silly me. Okay, so there you go. So you've got Juno there as well, up there on the midheaven. Okay. Lilith. Oh, Lilith rising. Tell you who else I've got that I did. I can't remember if this is mean or true Lilith. Let me have a quick look. I'm not going to get sidetracked. I can't get sidetracked today. I'm aware that I haven't done a Lilith show yet. So we've got the true black moon. So you've got true Lilith on your ascendant. Someone else who's got the same that I was doing recently was Elizabeth Olsen, who plays the Scarlet Witch in the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. She is in the Avengers films, and she's also in the recent Doctor Strange film called The Multiverse of Madness. And in The Multiverse of Madness, I really think she plays a very strong Lilith character. I would recommend you guys watch that if you're interested, but she's got true Lilith on her ascendant as well, so that's interesting. So now I'm wondering if your appearance, if you've got like red hair naturally, or you know, like how you're physically embodying Lilith in some way. But we're not doing a Lilith show. So anyway, yes, your chart has a strong Pluto flavor, and yes, your 10th house cusp is Gemini as well. Now, it's funny that you would be interested in this idea, because I, having used equal houses forever, basically, and I was talking to someone the other day, and I said that I do occasionally use Placidus, and I like to use Regiomontanus for something else as well. So I'm very interested in different house systems. I'm not really that keen on whole signs, but I do use whole signs for horoscope writing. It's a kind of a no-brainer for me. Unless it was a personal horoscope I was writing for somebody, in which case I would use their ascendant. It's very specific, it's very precise. But yes, with whole signs, I can get on board with that. But with equal house, there is a midheaven, a floating midheaven, which we have here for you in your chart in the 9th. And we also have a 10th house cusp, which is like a reinforced description of career. So you have what is really good about this, and maybe this appeals to Capricorns, maybe it appeals to people who are searching in a sense for like career, or looking for a sense of meaning through vocation. Perhaps the equal house system is a good one for you to play with, because it gives you 2 lots of insight on the career aspect of your life, and also in turn also give you 2 types of insight into your IC and your 4th house cusp as well. So that's the thing. And I know Frank Clifford prefers to use equal for that very reason. And actually, I've got a book recommendation. I've got 2 book recommendations. I've got this one, which is the Midheaven Spotlight on Success. And there's so many great quotes in here. But just here we are. Frank says, the MC as a skylight to which we look up for inspiration and receive illumination. And the IC is a basement laden with artifacts from our past and damp with memory. Love that. Very often with the MC-IC axis, we want what we know, the IC, until we know what we want. But we can't know where we're going, MC, unless we know where we've been, IC. Where you're from, your heritage, understanding and learning about who you are and your core and the person you've always been, or where you've come from, your family line, the generational sort of inheritance that we receive through the IC, where we are indoctrinated into our family's particular culture, because ultimately, when you meet people, one of the things that you learn when you get into relationships with other people is every family is different. And you might meet somebody whose family is similar to yours, but the family dynamics are very unique to each individual family. And like myself now, a mother, I understand that family dynamics are unique to that specific set of people because of synastry as well. But there is an element of bringing through tradition, bringing through practices that have been subconsciously handed down through parenting, through beliefs that are carried through. So, for example, my mum, for a long time, she used to hang on to things and hoard things. But her mum was of the war generation who had to ration everything. So you'd hang on to everything and you'd make do and you'd mend and you'd keep everything. So that kind of generation, post-war generations, who like my mum is of the baby boomer generation, a lot of these boomers feel comfortable and safe with stuff all around them because it makes them feel like they have it satisfies this lack mentality. Whereas people that grow up in those kind of cluttered environments, like myself and a friend of mine, we talk about this a lot, we feel stifled like that because we didn't have a need to ration, and therefore we didn't need to have all this stuff, and it just felt like we were living in kind of like living museums in a sense. But you can see how these kind of things are handed down and how we either kick back against our parental lessons or how we embrace and continue with the teachings throughout our future generations. But it's interesting how important the IC is in the chart, and the 4th house cusp. I think most importantly, the MC and the IC really are indicators. Probably more, I mean, I've written here, the MC-IC, Kundalini snake, a form of transformation, a spectrum from dark to light. It's almost a sense of, the core. It's a great image for the MC-IC is to look at a tree and the roots of a tree. The roots being the IC, the branches and the leaves being, and the fruits being the MC. And where we, I look at the MC-IC as well as kind of like a work-life balance. It's where we, balance ourselves between personal life and satisfy our own personal needs, going out into the world and serving people, becoming an authority in the area we choose, what we aspire to, the people we look up to. So, and this is interesting how it relates to the parental axis as well, because it's said that really, when we look at the IC, or generally the 4th house, can actually relate more to the father than the mother. It's obviously everything changes now, and we have, like non-binary identities. We also have very non-traditional, non-typical family units where we might have 2 dads or 2 mums. There could be more than one mum, more than one dad, in the sense of like stepmoms, and like there's just nowadays in this modern world, it's not your typical parents together, stay together, siblings, and that's the family unit, and there's no, it's not a taboo to come from a broken home, I say in inverted commas. So yeah, there's this sense of the chart describes this. Now, MCIC is, I think, very, very important because it really describes, almost like, I think about, when I think of the MCIC, sometimes when I'm doing grounding protecting rituals, I think of the IC as where my feet are touching the earth. And then I imagine the roots growing into the earth. And the MC is kind of like where my brain, where my head is connected up to source. It has that feeling to me of being the pole that the world we are in revolves around us, because obviously the world doesn't revolve around us. The world is revolving around its own axis, and ultimately it's orbiting the sun. However, from a personal perspective, the world and everything does kind of revolve around us, our own personal world. And I think that the birth chart describes how the world revolves around our individual experience. So the MCIC is almost like our own personal axis in which our world revolves around us. And, obviously you've got like the ascendant, which is your perspective point, and you've got the descendant where you've got like the other people area of life. But the MCIC is very important and very pivotal when it does come to describing career choices and vocational aspirations. However, if you're using equal house, then every house in the chart is going to be equally divided up. I believe equal house is the oldest house calculation system that we know of recorded. So, if you're kind of like a purist or into like doing things the original traditional way, then actually looking at the chart in this way, in the equal system, is not the worst. And if you guys have seen my episode with Wade Caves, which part 2 is now actually available on the YouTube channel, so you can go and watch the second part. He talks about how to calculate house systems, why some of them are better than others, in his opinion and his research, which I have to say is very thorough, very interesting. And I would wholeheartedly encourage you to go and see what Wade has to say about each of the house systems. He's not a huge fan of equal, but he prefers it to whole sign because the equal house system is precise in its calculation of the ascendant and of the midheaven, and both of those axes. But with the added bonus of the equal house system is the fact that we do have that added depth to explore the 10th house. So, and the 4th house. Now, when I talk about my 4th house and my IC, I have my IC in Leo. So my midheaven is in Aquarius. But I also have a 4th house cusp with Virgo on the cusp of my 4th house. So interestingly, so I think like my MC IC falls in the 2nd and 8th house. So my 4th house is basically Mercury ruled, just like my ascendant. So I find it interesting that I have a Mercury ruled ascendant and 4th house cusp. And to cut a very long story short, I really noticed some changes in my life reflected through my home and my whole personal outlook when my progressed Mercury finally reached the degree in which it turned retrograde years ago. Whole nother show to talk about, but it was reinforcement to me of the potential and the power of equal house system. Because say you do have a progressed Mercury, say you do have Mercury retrograde natally, say you do have Mercury ruling your 1st and your 4th house, or say you have it ruling your 10th and your 1st house, for example, then when the progressed Mercury retrograde eventually reaches the point in which it turned retrograde and is now essentially going direct, then for you, for the 1st house, for the first house and 10th house natives, your whole perspective on life and potentially your career vocation, what you do, which gives your life a sense of meaning, is going to actually have a sense of falling into place, just like it did for me. So that's just one reason why it's interesting. It's worth having a look at what rules your 4th house cusp and your 10th house cusp, and then looking at what they're doing natally for you, and also looking at what they're doing as far as progressions are concerned. We will talk about progressions in another show, but this is for probably the people that already know what progressions are, or people that want to learn more. There's plenty of information out there. I'll put some links. But another book I want to recommend to you about Midheavens, but generally everything, it's another Frank Clifford book, Getting to the Heart of Your Chart. And this book is great because it is really about dissecting your own natal chart. But what Frank has done is he's gone through, there's a section on, let's have a look, the set of signs on the 4 angles, because obviously the 4 angles are important. Frank's got a couple of example charts here, but he's got a guide to the 39 angle combinations. So you could have all cardinal, so all 4 elements, so the natural zodiac. So, you know, whether it's Aries on the 10th house or the 7th or the 4th, but basically there's like so many combinations. It also gives you a feeling of how somebody engages with the world around them. If your axis is a fixed one, then you're not going to have much wobble. If you've got a mutable axis, MCIC axis, then maybe you do move around a bit. Now with you, Catherine, let's have a look. So you've got Gemini on your 10th house cusp. Now you said that the opportunity came to you, was it the 4th of September? 4th of September 2020. Let's have a quick look if I can just add a new chart. So let's new chart. Oh, hang on. So let's go in and change. Let's go in and change this chart. So edit chart. 4th of September 2020. Calculate. So this is when Catherine will have had. Okay, so yes, so you actually had, this was during the time when the nodes went into, they were in Gemini, Sagittarius, and this at this point you noticed that you were pulled in a different direction. Now, you did give me an update as well. You said that the job didn't actually work out. It was an opportunity that appeared and then disappeared very quickly. Though you got the job, you suddenly found yourself unemployed quite quickly. But you don't look on that in a necessarily negative way. In fact, you kind of realize that it forced you into a new way of seeing the world through the eyes of astrology, the lens of astrology, which I think is interesting because you actually were prompted to revisit some other areas of interest and study, which is no surprise when you've got the nodes in the signs of study. What's it? I call this collecting and distributing of information. So it's interesting that you had that going on. But actually, if we go back a few months, we can see. There we go. So yeah, approximately days. There we go. So there we go. Wow. So the North Node went into Gemini around June 2020, and then within a couple of months, you were finding yourself with new opportunities, and you know, and this really pulled you out of your comfort zone. I mean, talk about being stuck in a comfort zone, because you know, with Taurus, your midheaven in Taurus, you absolutely need to have reliability, consistency. I find people with Taurus midheavens are really drawn to creative work as well, whether it's expressive through the body, through dance, or whether it's you know, artistry, or whether it's music. There is a need to express yourself in a creative way through your work. And actually you have got Venus, the ruler of your midheaven, in conjunction with Uranus as well, so in a Venus ruled sign. So we've got double whammy Venus vibes going on here. That you've got 1, 2, 3 stellium in Libra, interestingly to look at, and then you've got up here Ceres, Juno, midheaven, and Saturn all sitting there in your 9th house. So you feel like you've understood the 9th house through having your floating MC in this place, but have kind of not thought about the 10th house. The exact same thing happened to me. In fact, so I've got my midheaven in Aquarius. I was always really focused on that, and it was in the 8th house. So I was always like, oh, more about the 8th house and Aquarius. And then I realized that my 10th house cusp was, I think it's Pisces. And then I suddenly realized, wow, okay. So I didn't really think about that before. So it actually makes Neptune quite important, and Jupiter. And then something else was highlighted to me recently, that I have a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in my 6th house in Sagittarius. Jupiter is the traditional ruler of Pisces, and Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius. So suddenly I realized that I've got a conjunction with both my career indicators, planets that rule career areas of my chart, in conjunction in the 6th house, which is also a house of work. So suddenly it's painting a picture of somebody who's very, very focused on work. And, I would go as far as to say that I can be quite obsessive about work. I can be constantly thinking about it when it comes to what I do, my astrology stuff. And, my Gemini ascendant is always looking for, I can't help but juggle lots of different things. And so I can relate to your Gemini on the 10th house cusp, and it's mutable as well, which means there's the ability to adapt. It doesn't mean that you have to do lots of different things, but it probably means that you're in a job that you were in a job that you knew like the back of your hand. It was predictable to an extent, but there was a lot of movement within it, potentially. It probably allowed you to do lots of, have a lot of variety. I think I would say somebody with Gemini on the 10th house cusp needs to have variety in their work. And like I said here, you've got Mercury in your 1st house in Virgo at 18. And yes, it's a bit wide, but there is that conjunction with Pluto. So for you as well, there's a sense of Mercury in Virgo is already very focused and detail orientated, but to have Pluto in conjunction with Mercury, it's really focused, and it brings that element to your work as well. So I think that there's an ability for you to use your brain a lot, as well as being creative, maybe using your brain in a creative way and focusing, maybe getting obsessed, maybe doing lots of research. Like I've got a friend who's an illustrator, and in order to illustrate and do some of these really amazing pieces of artwork, she has to do a lot of research. And her research is often into fringe alternative areas, which allow her to satisfy this thirst for dabbling with sort of occult unknown areas with this Pluto, but also allowing her to do a bit of research and understanding. So she does reading, she does writing, and she does illustration. So it's interesting that she gets to do that. And I feel similar vibes here of being very focused and very creative, being able to get into hyper focus in certain areas, a bit like ADHD. I don't see ADHD as much as with the Taurus stuff, though, with Uranus in there at the moment, maybe. But if you've got Venus in conjunction with Uranus, and that rules your midheaven, and you've also got, Mercury on the ruler of your ascendant and also on your 10th house cusp, there is an ability to juggle many things. Or you could say the drawback is that you spread yourself quite thin, and you can't give your undivided focus to one particular thing unless you get into a hyper focus, which a lot of people with ADHD do. So there does seem to be a kind of conflict between wanting to work solidly in one area, but also to split yourself between a multitude of things. And when you said as well in your message that you have what you need for work is very specific, so you don't often find an opportunity that suits you. I think that that's interesting, because that's a way that you could look at it, in the sense that you are in a way unconsciously, subconsciously aware of the challenges that are in place when you have your midheaven in a next door neighbor sign to your 10th house cusp. So Taurus and Gemini are worlds apart in how they operate. You've got fixity and you've got mutability. Bringing that together, you either need to have a job that's very mutable, but you have like a structured routine within that, or you have a job that's very reliable, that's always going to be there, and within that you've got movement. But it's also about with having that fixity, there's not so much freedom, although some people might find freedom in reliability and consistency. But with Gemini on the 10th house cusp, there's a sense of needing to have movement and freedom and having options and having choices. Whereas with Taurus, you might say that they're a little bit like, well, sorry, but that's just the way it is. It's just tough. You just got to get on with it. But having that awareness of like the conflicting qualities of Taurus and Gemini, but also understanding that, you know, something has to be really worth your while to hand in your notice and do a new job. That's so fixed, because whether or not it is down to having very specific needs, or whether it's more about not wanting to leave something that you know you can do quite easily, or you know that you've been doing successfully for a long time and you don't really want to rock the boat and take a chance and do something that you're not so keen on. I mean, given time, if you found something you didn't like, you could probably find things to work around. But you see, the thing is that ultimately what was going on was Uranus up there. You know, you've got Uranus up there on your, like moving up through, and this was at the time, oh, that's the time when the nodes went in, but then we went into September, didn't we? So let's see how fast we can go. August, September. So yes, as that's moving, so look, there you go. You've got Uranus sitting up there, and you can see the North Node moving back. Oh, look, now I've gone into October. But anyway, so now if we look at current day, we have actually got Uranus very close to your midheaven again. And look, as we speak, we have the moon on your midheaven. Now, I recorded this a little while ago, so this is not current, but interesting that we would have, you know, the moon currently sitting on top of your midheaven as we happen to talk about this. No wonder the time felt right. But yeah, and the ascendant down here on the IC as well. I suppose maybe it's worth looking at the IC to understand that it's floating in your third, as opposed to being, you know, exactly on the 4th house cusp. So you've got your IC, and, you know, 11 degrees away, you've got Neptune. For me, that feels close enough to an angle. It does feel close enough. You could say that at about the age of 11, maybe 10 and a half, 11, something may have happened that left you feeling disillusioned with family life. Often when I see a planet down here that's caused issues, it could be that maybe one of the parents may have left home, and that left things in a more of a chaotic state. Maybe you moved house, moved countries, and you found yourself feeling very disconnected, unable to really, the roots are so saturated with water, it's hard for life to thrive unless you happen to be a water dwelling plant. You know, so it's an interesting like visual, but you know, with Scorpio on the IC as well, it could be that you know, there were things at home, that a lot of secrets at home, that maybe, you know, there were a lot of secrets and a lot of lies. You know, sorry if this feels a little bit exposing, but it's just some of the things that you could potentially see. You know, or maybe, you know, it could be that, you know, your house was a bit more of an artist's studio, because, you know, one of your parents worked as a freelance artist, for example. Don't know why I've got that going around in my head at the moment. Or maybe one of the parents was a drinker, or it could be that they were spiritual and they did spiritual work. You know, but when you look at the 4th house cusp, when we see Sagittarius on the 4th house, and we understand that you've got, you know, your midheaven in the 9th, it feels like suddenly there's an international feel about the 9th house and the 4th house. You know, any planets that sit up in the 9th, we do have this tendency to maybe be speaking to an audience wider than one that sits in the same room. It could be that we're broadcasting to people across the country, or even across the world. But when you've got the Sagittarius on the 4th house cusp, it could be that, you know, it may be that politics and news was like really important in your family, and staying in top of current affairs and that kind of thing. Or it could be that actually, you know, you were somebody who often traveled, your families took a lot of holidays, that needing to experience different cultures. Maybe the home is a learning environment. You know, there's lots of different ideas you can play with. But again, neighbouring signs, Scorpio and Sagittarius. Scorpio is very much holding on, staying where you are, dealing with crisis, adapting and evolving through that, transforming. Whereas like Sagittarius is all about the letting go, not holding on to things, the adventure of life, experiencing new cultures, experiencing new foods, new ways of living. You know, so it's very much about change and embracing something new and different, the adventure, exploring life, and, you know, taking risks, you know, not having to depend on something that's solid and in place. You know, I think also when you see the fourth house cusp, you think about how the house might be decorated. So it could be that, you know, you have bookcases with encyclopedias, and, you know, like the house might have an element of a learning environment feel about it, for example. Just off the top of my head, I'm saying, you know, maybe geography teacher globes and a drinks globe, maybe with that Neptune sitting there on the IC. Maybe you've got one of those little globes that you lift up the top and there's loads of alcohol in it. Something that I would love to have one day. But you know, it's interesting to toy with the difference, but it does give you a deeper insight. So hopefully you found that interesting. I'll tag some books, and I'll also tag one that I've been told is a good one for progressions, though I haven't read it yet. And I will be doing a show on progressions. But just one more thing to point you to look at is to look at Jupiter as the ruler of the fourth house cusp, to look at Mercury as the ruler of the 10th house cusp. So look at the cusp rulers. So we have Jupiter and Mercury. Again, this is like, you know, the planets of Jupiter's very much about searching for meaning. So is Mercury. It's looking for meaning and understanding. So it's like, you know, your fourth and your 10th, which are very much flavoring who you are, and what you identify with, either through your family traditions and, you know, that kind of that culture, or what you look out into the world, which is external from you, that you aspire to, and understanding maybe the deeper connotations of it being Mercury and Jupiter ruled. And then also looking again at your MCIC. Now we know that Pluto is a ruler of the IC. It's also, Mars is also a ruler traditionally of the IC, Scorpio, which you've got a Sun-Mars conjunction. And I've also just noticed that you've got Jupiter in at 29 Libra, and Venus, which rules Libra, is in its own sign in conjunction with Uranus. So the picture starts to get more complex, but at the same time it starts to unfold. So again, relationship planets, that very Venus-y flavor with your MC and your sort of the stuff in Taurus and also in Libra that you've got in your chart. But on top of that, you've got your Sun-Mars conjunction, which automatically now tells me that home life is something that has left a lasting imprint, whereas some people can grow away from their roots and they can carve out a sense of individuality, and though it's never not part of you, you can do something that differentiates yourself from that. With Mars, your Sun in Leo and Mars in conjunction in the 12th house, which already struggles with its own identity, it may be that your family has a much heavier influence over you, a much deeper influence over you than you are consciously aware, or maybe you are consciously aware of it now. And I would say that it's possible that it's worth exploring your family heritage in a therapeutic way. Something that a friend of mine is doing is something called family constellations. And I'm immediately thinking that this sounds like it would be something that would be of use to you. But yes, so it's very interesting. And just to revisit the MC quickly, to have Saturn up there on your MC, even though you, you know, it must have been very hard for you to sort of break away from the job that you did for a long time, because Saturn in Taurus, I think, really crystallizes that commitment. So you are essentially stuck. When I say stuck, I don't mean that in a negative way, but you really do get stuck in the mud with Saturn in Taurus, particularly on the MC. You can be in the same job for decades. What is interesting and exciting for you coming up is the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which is going to be occurring, I think it's April 2024. So let's go. Where are we? That's 2023, 2024. Let's go months. Let's go back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it happens on the 4th of April. But you can see here, Jupiter and Uranus come together, and it's going to make a conjunction on your Saturn, close enough to your midheaven. It's high enough in the chart. Uranus rules your 6th house, work. Jupiter rules your 4th house and also your 7th house. So for you, home, relationships and work, it could be that you're, building a business or looking for work in which that you will be working alongside somebody else, business partnership maybe, or perhaps it's a relationship. Home life gets a boost. There's a change. You might be moving house. It definitely is going to magnify that Uranian quality, and it's probably going to give your Saturn a bit of a rumble. But I think it will be an exciting rumble, because yes, Saturn rules your 5th house as well. So, depending on where you are in your life, whether you've got children, or whether you are in some way or another working in some kind of creative project, it looks like this whole area of your chart from the 4th up to the 7th is going to have a very interesting shake-up come that April 2024 when Jupiter and Uranus meet. So anyway, that's just a little bit of fun. I hope you enjoyed looking at the MCIC in a little bit more depth. Hopefully it makes sense. If it doesn't, please let me know, and maybe I can record some more about it. We're going to be having the draw for the Magic of I Almanac in November, fast approaching. So if you'd like to be in with a chance of winning the diary, subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the bell for notifications. I don't have a great deal of subscribers on YouTube, so the odds are pretty good. And if you are not sure whether your channel's private, then screenshot your subscription and email it to me to stefanie@stelliumastrology.com. That's stephanie@stelliumastrology.com, and I will put you in the draw and any future draws, because I'll be doing a giveaway every single year. Don't know what it'll be every year, but I'll be doing a giveaway every single year, regardless of what I decide the prize will be. So I hope you guys are good, and I've enjoyed recording this. Hopefully it's been enlightening for you, Catherine, and it's helped you to understand the conflicts between signs. But the often with conflict, it's like, was it necessity is the mother of invention? We are literally the invention of our own inner conflict when it comes to the natal chart. Nothing is perfect. Nothing works together perfectly. You have nice charts that have easy, harmonious aspects, but there's usually something that is in conflict with something. And from that conflict is born aspects, the more complex aspects of our personality and our needs, desires, and our wants. And through that experience is our personal experience with life, particularly if it's conflicting between the midheaven and the 10th house cusp, for example. We may constantly be searching for the perfect thing that fulfills us in every way, and it may not be possible to have every area fulfilled. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. I'd love to know what you do for a living, and yeah, I'll let you know. I'll send you a message that I've recorded this. But also I will, I'm going to get back to doing more listener charts. So anybody who wants to sign up to the mailing list, that's how you can get on board with the listener charts. Slowly but surely, I'm getting back onto track with it. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Take care, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye.